Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from irishsportsdaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uwayama, Mr. Jamie University, and we are also joined today by Mike Goolsby, former Notre Dame linebacker, who someone mentioned in the chat has been all over the YouTube shows, and he's got his own thing going on right now with John Kennedy on Patreon, so you want to check that out. Mike, thanks for coming on the show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Like I said, we talking off air. I'm a fan of your guys' work. You know, your boss, Mike Frank, lives in Omaha. I'm like, dude, it's the off season. Let's start collaborating. I think a lot of us do a great job, and let's all be friends. So yeah, happy to be here, man.
Yeah, we've got some fans of yours. The crossover people love the crossover on this episode. So it's going to be fun. It's a Ball Knowers podcast. We're going to be talking about ball. We're going to be talking about the Notre Dame kind of personnel. What we think Notre Dame is going to be doing with their personnel on offense and defense. There's some stuff going around on Twitter about how LSU was using the slot fade out of their 11 and 10 personnel packages, and I saw it out of Malik Neighbors. I saw it out of Brian Thomas. Wondering who's going to be the person doing that for Notre Dame. So I want to talk to you guys about that and anything else that comes up. So thank you everyone for tuning in. If this is your first time catching us, please subscribe to this channel. Please hit the like button. Please hit the notification bell so whenever it is we are going live. Links to our podcast are in the description below. And before we get going, Mike, that's a pretty sweet setup you have over there. Looks good, man. You got the graphic and behind you. You got the everything looks good, man. Good.
Yeah,
good job by you.
I could have thrown the hit. If I'd have thought about it, I could have got the Hit and Hustle logo up there. But yeah, man, moving into the new place. There's this like room way down in the basement. I'm like, that's my podcast studio. So it took a while to pull it together. I'm still trying to figure out all this audio stuff, but I'm happy with it, trying to put a good product out there,
Good. Well, it looks fresh. And if you want to look fresh, what you can do is you can head over to ESQclothing.com. Founded by Notre Dame alum Ga Wang. You've seen ESQ on all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches. With over a decade of making the best custom clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best in 2024. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or that perfect tuxedo for a wedding season, check out Ga's amazing work at ESQclothing.com. Book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. That's ISD for 10% off your entire purchase. Mike, I bet you had ISQ when you were playing football at Notre Dame.
I wish, brother. I wish we had a lot of things back then.
All right, Jamie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Except for, this just the same old, right? Like every kid in my kids class is sick. So like everybody just running through everything because you just get back at it and everybody's sick and they're spreading it all around to everyone again. So just good times having a kid in kindergarten.
Yeah. Well, you guys may know, Southern California is going through a pretty epic storm right now. It's been raining for 36 plus hours straight. It hasn't stopped. We're hanging in there. Drop off is tough right now. Just getting the kids off to school. We got them in all their gear, their boots, their jackets, umbrellas, and all that. But at Southern California streets, they're not totally prepared for this.
These California guys are soft, Mike. They can't handle the rain.
You said it. Well, Jamie, where do you live now?
I live in Toronto, so we get it's cold. It's cold here. Although it has been a pretty mild winter. In saying that, because I've only really had to shovel once in all of January. So, just knowing that February is probably going to be horrible, and I'll have to shovel probably 5 times a week. That's just it's kind of how it goes.
Comes with the
always with the slander. The schools are open. It's not like we can't handle it. It's just a factor, right? People are getting evacuated. Jamie, you should be a little bit more sensitive to that stuff.
I do know some people actually who are there right now that are like visiting. That what a time to visit too. Like you're just you're in Southern California, and it just happens to rain the only time it ever rains there. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's get started with the topics. Mike, you had mentioned before we when we were planning this, you had seen we did a show ranking the position groups on the units 1 through 9. We had offensive line was last for us. That was probably, I don't know, I want to say it controversial, but I don't think a lot of people would associate Notre Dame, their offensive line, with being the worst kind of unit going into the spring. But where did you come out on that? You said you watched it. Well, what did you think about that? Would you have changed anything?
You'd have to run me through the list again. It was a few days ago, like your all's rankings. So could we start there? I mean, because they mirrored each other. You had one was Jamie'd have one, you'd have it at 2.
All right. So
rundown.
my main the first one I had was quarterbacks were 1 for me. And I believe corners were number 1 for Jamie. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So it was quarterbacks 1 for me, corners 1 for Jamie, and then I had corners 2, safeties 3, I believe it was. We'll start there. Do you have any disagreement with that, Mike?
I think the quarterbacks being 1 is appropriate. In my mind, I kind of jumped to running back. In my mind, I mean, it'd be in my top 3. Safeties is interesting to me that you'd have safety that high with really only 1 proven player.
Well, I think I include Rod Hurd in that. I feel like he's a good player, right? So it's like he's not proven at Notre Dame, but he's more proven than say like Jaden Mickey is, or he's more proven than say Christian Gray is. Right now, I'm extremely high on Christian Gray, so that's why I have them to not just that, but Ben Morrison's like a 1st round pick in my opinion, 1st round caliber. So that's why he would get the bump there. But like but beyond Xavier Watts, like I feel like their number 2 guy is more proven than the other guys. So that's why I would put them up there. I believe Jamie had. Where did you have D-line, Jamie? Were they 3?
I had D-line 3. Yeah.
D-line. So going back to the safety thing, and yes, I kind of agree with D-line. Looking through that roster online, the way the roster is currently constituted, there's 20 defensive linemen if you go to like the team website, which is wild. And then you always got to jump back and go look at a Brennan Burns high school film, go look at a Traore's high school film. There's a ton of talent in that room. We're still a little small. But safety, going back to Rod Hurd, do we etch that in stone? Is he going to be a safety, or can he come down and compete at nickel? Because I don't love Clark in general, just, the Arizona State transfer. So I'm like, are we trying to create a little bit of competition at that nickel spot? Because it's so important.
What do you think?
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, Hurd played a ton of nickel at Northwestern, but how they played, like they played a ton of zone, and he was essentially more, I would say, even more than like much different than how Thomas Harper played it at Notre Dame, where like he was very much a man coverage nickel in most senses, right? And Hurd was more of like, I would say almost like a rover there, right? Like that's how he kind of played. That's how he played within that scheme, and very good tackler. I just think that I do think there is going to be competition at nickel. Like, I don't think it's 100% that like Jordan Clark is going to be the nickel. I think, certainly you bring him in with the intention of him probably being a, prime candidate there at the very least. And I think he was good. Not so good in 2023, but better in 2022 when they played more man. And so that's why I kind of think that he fits that. And I also like when there's a guy who's like coming over. He's a captain from another team. Like, I just think it's good to get more vets in there because it's a pretty young room in general. But I would say, like, don't sleep on guys like Micah Bell, like competing there. I wouldn't say it's like out of the realm of possibility that Mickey, they give him another look there. Maybe that's another thing where one of these other freshmen that they're bringing in, a Leonard Moore or Carson Hobbs, they're taking a look at those guys there too, because I really just think that Hurd, especially because of what they have at safety, like they're just so unproven there. And when they would play, when they would play with their like their 4-3, when teams went heavy, right? Teams would go 12 personnel, 13 personnel. Hurd would go back and play deep, right? So he was like the guy, they didn't take him out, they moved him back deep. So that's why I kind of think that he was really actually good downhill. I think he's a really good box player. He's a very good box player. I think Hurd, especially with the way they play Watts, where when they do play cover one, he's playing single high like a ton of time. I think Hurd they're good, like kind of playing off of each other, which is why I kind of think Hurd is better suited there, and that it'll probably be somebody else compete there. But I mean, it's a good option to have if you have another guy who's like, I mean, he's played a lot. He's played a lot there. So I definitely think like, but it's also another reason why, even though you would think where, oh, this guy's plays nickel, maybe you don't want to rock the boat because you already took a nickel, but you just got to take a guy who's just a good football player, and
Sure.
he could fit at different spots. So I really think that he was like, he might end up being one of the biggest guys that they take. Like I would say, like, we'll see what happens with the receivers and all that. And I do think Oben is pretty important. Like,
oh yeah, I just wrote his name down, Jamie. I just wrote Oben's name down. Yeah,
I think he's very important, especially with what they have returning at end. So I would say I would put him 1 for me as like the most important transfers they're taking. And I would take Riley Leonard, just take Riley Leonard off the table, because it's like quarterback. It's almost like in a different category. But I would say Rod Hurd might be like the next most important guy, because I think he's going to be a good player for Notre Dame.
Well, how did you go back? Remember Brandon Joseph? I don't know.
Yeah,
if he sniffed the NFL, I haven't paid attention.
No, he did. I mean, he was like a.
I think he's on a practice squad. He might have been a practice squad guy for someone.
Yeah, but I don't even know if he made it through the season. Yeah.
Okay. So, but we were all pretty stoked about getting Brandon Joseph. I mean, he was an All-American, and then I that nickel position is so damn important. You mentioned Mickey, a lot of Mickey's traits, and then even just like what you hear about his makeup, like just how competitive he is, talks a lot of trash. Like, it just seems like he'd be such a perfect fit at nickel. And then you talk about like Hurd coming in at safety, developing a Schuler, et cetera. Like, this is, it's all big picture stuff. Nobody has the real answer, but it's like, if Hurd's here for 1 year, is he a 1 year transfer?
Yeah, he's a 1 year guy.
Yeah.
So then, I mean, if you look at 2025, Watts is gone, Hurd's gone, you're starting over. So when I think about finding a spot for Hurd, creating competition at that nickel, it gives you a chance to develop another safety. It's just something interesting to talk about in general. In the corners, it's like, I think you've got 3.5 good corners when you look at the roster. So I kind of agree with both of those. And then, D-line, what a fun group. And Oben's an interesting one. And, I train kids, and that's what I do Saturdays and Sundays. I'm out there working with kids, and it's like I've started to get really, really good at training edges, Jamie, just in like teaching get off. And like I look at Oben's body, and if what is he, 6'4", 6'5", like his inseam, if he goes to the tailor, he's got to have like a 38-inch inseam. Like, his legs are long. And I think like if Al Washington could continue to work with him, like his first step should be much better than it is in terms of like, his angle off the ball. I mean, there's a lot to work with there.
Yeah, I can't agree more with that, because I really watch Oben and I see like the good stuff from him. I'm like, he could be playing at a higher level than he played at Duke. And it wasn't that he played bad. Like, he obviously, got a ton of pressure. And I would say he is very similar to Javonte Jean-Baptiste in that way, where I'm like, there's a lot of meat on the bone for a guy who's been in college for a long time. And You know, and whatever. I'm not trying to diss Larry Johnson. Obviously, he's a very at Ohio State, you know, legendary coach. But I find like a lot of Larry Johnson guys to me, and it's not that he's a good pass rush coach in general, but I don't find guys like, I think it's like he gets dudes, and those dudes play and they end up being, because they already have these great traits, right? I don't know like how great of a developer of talent he is in terms of like guys breaking down the fundamentals. And I would say with Al Washington, he really, because I would say Mike Elston too is a very good developer of like, you know, to the bones, like going down and getting guys to like recognize blocks, playing leverage, like strong hand, strong punch, like just things that are like fundamental defensive line. Like you have to come out and learn that stuff right away. And if you're going to be a player, right? Like if you're going to be a player, and where you would see guys, that was to me something that I saw with Elson was like guys year to year, you'd see the improvement of just like their base fundamentals. And I really see that same kind of thing with Al Washington. Like, I mean, Riley Mills to me is a perfect example of that. And like JJB 100%, because he did not play like that at Ohio State. So I have really high hopes for Oben that he can be this guy. Because I actually think that's the kind of thing where like he supposedly got a Senior Bowl invite and turned it down to come back because he was going to be like a late round pick or something like that. But, and I don't know how high he's going to go. I'm not saying he's going to be like a first round pick by any means, but he has talent to maybe be a day 2 guy if he makes like a big jump. And I just think he can get so much better. And everybody looks at like the young guys and think, oh, these are the guys who make the jump. But there's so many guys that are older too, that really kind of can take those jumps later on. Especially too, if they're in like the right situation. I think Oben is a guy that, first of all, he's going to walk in right away, and there's not a ton of like older competition there. So I do think, I mean, he's going to get a ton of reps. He's going to be kind of penciled in as that guy, and I think he could really take off.
Yeah, I go back, and let's talk about Mills too. I'm just keeping notes. We're just going to bounce around, but I go back to, again, Oben's film, you know, and teaching these young kids. It's like less is more, Jamie, in terms of your steps to the quarterback. And like when you go back and look at Oben's highlight tapes, whatever, he gets a lot of like what I would call late sacks. And then if he had a little bit more explosive get off, we might have got there half a count earlier. But just I look at his length, man, and like that first step. I mean, most of these guys in the league, I don't want to be that guy, but it's like inside foot up, outside foot up, and then the number of steps that I'm taking mixed in with whatever my move is. And it's like there's all these accounts on like Instagram, like D-line vids and all this, and I'll send it to my high school kids, be like, that's exactly what we're working on. It's 3 steps, boom, 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 and I'm clean, you know? So yeah, a ton of potential there. And I mean, if we're talking about older guys, transfer guys, I mean, Riley Leonard is the prince of there's more development to be had there. You know, I've kind of coined him, Riley Leonard to me still at this stage is like an athlete playing quarterback. You know what I mean? Whereas like Sam Hartman was a quarterback that had some athletic traits. But Riley Mills is another one, man. It's like he's on that freaks list year in and year out. I could draw a corollary between, if we're talking specific D-line here, fellas, like Riley Mills and Tyson Ford. If you go with me on this, it's like Riley Mills wanted to play strong side end. It's like Mother Nature's taking its course.
Everybody wants to be, every D tackle wants to be an end. Every end wants to play linebacker.
We talked about this. We talked about this on the last show about how, like, where are these guys specifically supposed to be, right? So like Tyson Ford's a good example. Brennan Vernon's a good example, right? Like guys who it's like, does Notre Dame want them to be like, do they want them to grow to be playing the 3 tech, or do they want them to grow to lean out and play strong side end, right? And I feel like that's kind of the thing with those 2 guys specifically. It's like, what exactly does Notre Dame want them to be? And I think Riley kind of is caught in that as well, right? Like Jamie mentioned, sometimes he's not even on the field in pass rush situations, right? So like what exactly, you know, like if there is always a big conversation every off season, like the last 2 off seasons, like, like fans are like, you know what, Riley Leonard, he's gonna double-digit sacks, double-digit tackles for loss. And you look at when he's on the field, it's like, when is that coming? Like, when does he actually have the opportunity for that? So it's a question for me. It's like you talk about Riley Leonard, you talk about Tyson Ford, and I think that's apt. And I'll throw Brennan Vernon in there as well. Like, what are those guys actually supposed to be in this defense? I'll throw that to you, Mike.
Well, this is I love this. And thanks for talking ball. I just I love it, man. So it's like, going back to Tyson Ford, when I break down kids on YouTube or on Patreon, I'll do fun comps. It's a fun comp. I'm not saying this is the case. It's just right. I saw Tyson Ford's film in high school, and he reminded me of Chris Jones from the Chiefs. Just a big, long, looked like he had a lot of natural power, pretty fluid in his movements. I'm like, okay, what is Chris Jones playing at? I don't know, 290. And it's like, let Mother Nature take its course, Tyson. Let yourself kick down into playing 3 technique. Now, what are these guys supposed to be, Greg? Do we as fans and maybe even coaches, do they put too much stock into measurables, height and weight? It's like, well, Brennan Vernon's not 280. Can he kick inside? It's like, well, on a third and obvious, let him go. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I think there's always a degree of that. And maybe it's a Notre Dame thing where I always talk about building trust with your position coach, and that he can push you out there and not him. He doesn't get exposed to his boss, the coordinator, head coach, if you drop the ball on any given play. But there's enough young talent in that D line room where it's like, we don't necessarily know where they fit. So it's like, give them some run and sprinkle them in and just see how they do. Right. Yeah. You see where I'm going with that? It's like, yeah. I know maybe they're not perfectly drawn up. It's not the guy create a player in Madden that you would want. Maybe he's 15 pounds too light here, this or that. But some of these guys that have twitch, Vernon's got twitch, Traore's got twitch, Devin Houston's got twitch. It's like, I know they're not 300 pounds just yet, but roll them out there and see if they can get to the quarterback. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I don't know if Riley Mills. There's 2 things with him. I don't see the arm length with Riley, and he's just so damn big. I want to go back to the USC game, not last year, the year prior. There was clips in that game where he was dragging ass, he was exhausted. And I sat with him at one of these player dinner things a couple springs ago, got his cell phone number. And I texted him. I was like, buddy, you going to think about losing some weight this year? Because the power, Jamie, you played the position. There is a difference between straight up power and size. Yeah. You can have a big guy that's not necessarily as powerful as a guy that's 20 pounds light. You know what I mean? So it's like, you already have the weight room strength, the power, Riley. If you trimmed off 10, 15 pounds of baby fat, maybe you'd be more dynamic. I look at guys in the NFL like a Strahan, plays his whole career at 285. He gets older and older. And what does he do, dude? Starts losing weight. Yeah. So I think sometimes we get too caught up in weights, but then I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth because it's like that Sean Sevillano. I love that kid. It's and he's 300 plus. So I don't know where these kids are going to shake out. It should be a fun spring. But I would just caution coaches and fans, not get too stuck on it. It should be hard and fast with just a number in terms of whatever that weight is on that roster.
Yeah. And then I think this is something that we mentioned when they came out with those roster numbers too, is that I don't know how accurate all of those weights are, because some of them are Howard Cross lost 15 pounds or whatever it was, it's not all those guys. It's not exactly what it is. And I don't know. Or this guy weighed the exact same. He weighed 246 again, some of it, I don't know how accurate it is. And you kind of find out. And then obviously when you get to see some of these guys in person in the spring and in fall camp, you get to see there's a difference when you see Armel Mukam, who's another guy who kind of fits in that Brennan Vernon, like, he's kind of coming in as like a tweener, but I think he's a 3-tech, and he doesn't need to be 300 pounds, but he can be like 285 to 295 or something and just keep his athleticism and be fine and just get after it. But it's about like gaining that strength and getting like a lot of it too. So much of it is there's very few of these guys that come in. And I'll say Vernon kind of has a little bit of it where he's kind of got man strength already, where you kind of see that. And that's something that obviously like the other players had mentioned, like there's not a lot of guys that come in and they're like, you'd say like, this guy's violent when they come in as like 18-year-olds. And he had that, like that's what was like the buzz about him, which is always a good thing. But for other guys, it takes time. I mean, Mills is a perfect example because he was a lot more violent just in things like just block, like getting off of blocks, where before I was like, this guy's he's stuck, like just stuck on blocks too long. And he was way better. And that's why his tackle numbers went like way up, right? I mean, partially playing inside too, but I mean, that was definitely a thing with him. But yeah, I think with so many of these guys, especially like the young guys and so Mookum, Vernon, Houston, these guys who are coming in, and it's like they're the year after their freshman year, right? Where they're going into, it's kind of like that transition into it. And I think with someone like Ford, he like was last year, if you look at him, he got big, and I was like, okay, this is where he's going to be. And I'm like, he maybe put on a few too many LBs. So I'm like, okay, you just quit eating that Burger King a little bit and he'll be fine going forward. All of a sudden he's like 25 pounds lighter in the summer. And that was like a bad sign to me. I'm like, they probably told him like, yeah, slim up, whatever, but he was like, or he really wants to play end. So I'm going to prove I'm going to play end. It's like, you just got to kind of, yeah, like you said, let it go naturally. And sometimes too, it's got to be about like, well, this is where, not just where I want to play, but this is what's best for not just the team, but also for me if I want to like play beyond this level. And I don't think enough guys in general, I would say just line in general, period, because like you said, Mike, everybody wants to be those other guys who lines up off the edge and they want to do all these things. Like it's like nose guard wants to play 3-tech, right? Like all of that, right? They all want to rush the passer. They all want to do these things. They all want to be like, I can do these other things. And you know what? And if you can do all those things, great, but not everyone can. So find your fit and then go from there. Right.
Sure.
And so that's too, like when it kind of, I mean, Lauren Landau, that is going to be the biggest thing for me, for him. And I know, because that's kind of what he's known for, is like these individual, like working with guys individually to get them to where they want to go, like as pros, right? With, and these other athletes that he's worked with. And that, like, to me, yeah, okay, seeing the winter workout videos, like everybody loves it. Oh, they're pushing the sleds, they're doing this. Yeah, that's great, right? That it is great, whatever, and it is good for like culture and all that. I'm not saying anything against that, but when it comes down to it, it's going to be about him knowing the guys and knowing these guys, and also communicating with the coaches and being like, this is what we want from this guy and all that too, and finding exactly like, this is where you need to go. And it's different, obviously, for young guys who are coming in, because so many of those guys, they're just developing their bodies and they're just learning as you go. So like, guys like Rizak and Cahoon and other guys, it's like, come in, just let it happen and just work out and just, we'll figure it out. Right. But I think after you get like a year into the program, you have to start kind of looking at the direction of where these guys should go. And I mean, it sucks because it's like he comes in January, he's got to make these decisions about these kind of things, but these are important. And like that he needs to, like, this whole first semester for him is, I think largely he's got to evaluate those guys on the roster and look at like, this is where he's lacking and this is where he needs to do in order to get that. And like, obviously working in concert with the coaching staff to kind of figure out this is where we need him at.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there. The Landau thing. Yeah. I've said that I think his biggest challenge is just going to be working with that large of a group because his background and like even his private business, it's all done one-on-one. And I train my kids one-on-one. You give me 3 linebackers to work with, and it's more difficult for me. It is. I prefer to work one-on-one with a kid, and you can just be that much more specific. You know, it's interesting when you talk about D-line traits and like really overall movement skills. And this is something that I tell my kids and I tell their parents. We're talking about a highlight tape. Now go with me on this. So let's say you're an inside linebacker and you get a sack. And you come right through, you come clean as a whistle right up the middle and you get a sack. It's like, meh, like nice play. But what I would challenge people to try to like really wrap their minds around. It's not the result of plays. It's how you look making that play in terms of like the movement skills. And that's what these coaches are really evaluating. And like, to me, guys, like Boubacar Traore, he moves out of everybody. Forget Howard Cross. Howard Cross should have left, if I'm honest with you. I mean, he should be in the NFL. I might say the same for Xavier Watts, but it's like Howard Cross moves well, and Boubacar Traore, that bendiness, Jamie. I don't know, Greg, what the clinical term is.
Yeah,
but like, you know, you could see Boubacar Traore playing at Florida, getting 9.5 sacks and being a 2nd-round pick. He's like a Leonard Floyd, long, you know, and it's like some of that weight room work. It's like it hurts yourself, like your hips get tighter and all of that. Yeah. So all of this stuff is a real balance, man. It really is.
And it's interesting because Traore was a guy that had the most limited amount of tape, like publicly available out of any of those guys. And I think it's just mostly like a New England kid thing or something like that. Maybe they just play less games and they're just less available or whatever. Who knows with their coaches or whatever. Make stuff available. And I know, so like Christian McCollum, who, you know, works for ISD and does a fantastic job and is out there in New England area. He lives out in Springfield. So he has seen a ton of these guys. He knows the coaches and trainers very, very well in the area. And there are a lot of guys that told them, they're like, I don't know about Traore. Like, I just don't see it and whatever. And it was like shocking to me when I saw him in person. And I think even like the coaching staff was a little bit shocked about like how really good he looked like in person for the first time, and about that like flexibility and that just kind of like it's like a natural pass rush movement and like being able to like react, and just something that not all guys have, which is, it's weird to say this because he has the most sacks in the history of Notre Dame, but Isaiah Foskey didn't really have that. You know,
Here we go.
He did to a certain sense. He was a great finisher, but if you watch, a lot of his wins were like long arm, like he long armed and he did it. It was, I mean, awesome move. And I watched Foskey when he was a freshman, when he came in, and believe me, he was impressive. He extremely impressive, looked fantastic physically. You're like, this guy's going to be a dude. It was, you know, unanimous. Everyone knew he was going to be a dude. But, you know, as you kind of saw, he didn't have this. He's just different than Traore. Like, he just didn't quite have that same flexibility that he had, where Traore, I could see him like winning a variety of ways. And just once he develops his hands more, like, oh my gosh, like it's going to be scary. Like, where Foskey, obviously, he was a great player at Notre Dame. And, he's a 2nd-round pick. Like, the guy was awesome. But Traore, I really think, will be like the highest drafted edge guy that they've had in forever. Like, I'm struggling to think of the last, because I think it's before your time, Mike, we're talking about like Ronaldo Wynn and some of these guys like that. But even Ronaldo Wynn was like not really like a true edge guy.
He played in like a 3-4 almost.
Yeah,
like
right?
he was like a 3-4 end.
He was like a 4-eye type guy, right? So
yeah,
I mean, they really haven't had a guy like that in quite a while. So I'm couldn't be more excited about Traore, and I will be frankly shocked if he isn't at bare minimum like starting on third down.
And this is what we're talking about, right? In terms of, and we'll move on past D-line. Maybe I'm happy to just cruise here, but it's like, let the kid play, And again, maybe he's not great beating up a tight end, or he's not great, he's not as stout against the run as we want. And it's like, there's enough dudes in that room. And what we're saying is like, and I think you mentioned that earlier, Jamie, is like, these kids themselves have to give themselves like a place to stand. So it's like, we know Boubacar can be our pass rush specialist on third down. I think JJB had a little bit of that, I'm going to call it Gumbiness, like Gumby, like the flexibility, the bendability. And I talk about like hips is everything, man, because pass rush to me, Jamie, is getting my hips beyond that blocker's hips. Like once my hips if they get even, I'm leaving. And it's like, how many times do we see JJB round that edge and just crash? And like to be able to open up that hip, and be able to turn that corner. It's like Boubacar can do that. And he's one of these twitchy kids. It's like, the Viper position in general, you've got Traore and then you got just some guys. I think Junior Tuihalamaka should be a Mike linebacker to me. And he played as a true freshman as a Mike. I mean, he's like a KVA light, thicker waisted kid. You saw he has that, that Polynesian DNA. You knew he was going to put on that weight.
Yeah.
KVA has a thinner waist. I don't see that being an issue. But like Burnham, to me, I never seen that twitch. Like a lot of these kids can run, but are they twitchy? And I never really saw that. I mean, Burnham's got some of it, but I don't see quite that start-stop, that just explosiveness that I see from Traore. So it should be a good group. I mean, if you're telling me you've got Mills, Cross, Oben, and Traore, on a third and obvious that lets us maybe get away from playing so much damn man all the time and blitz in. I mean, our middle linebackers blitz like hundreds of times a year. It's insane, man. And
you bet you wish you were able to let go that much.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah. You blitz twice a game.
I think they could just do more sim stuff, right? Like he always wants to, but like what you're talking about is like bringing not as many as like 5 or 6, right? Like, and they don't bring numbers a ton. But they do have to supplement sometimes with 5. Yeah, like they do have to do that. And we were talking on the last show, like you want it to be like, let's see it on first down, because look, everyone has those third down, like winning kind of third down situations where it's like we've got a game we can run or something we like on our third down package. But like on first down, if they're throwing the ball, you're not going to run a ton of games in that situation. If anything, you're running a run game blitz, right? A run stopper. So that's kind of where it is for me. Like getting there on first down is the thing. And the thing about Traore too is like all these guys we're talking about, we're excited about them. We know what his position is. He knows what his position is. It's like it all fits, right? And a lot of these guys, you're not really sure. Like you're just talking about Tuihalamaka. Like, does it really fit, right? Like Josh Burnham, like does he really fit? But Traore like fits. Everyone knows what he's going to do and where he's going to fit in and things of that nature. Mike, you also brought up running backs. We can talk about those guys because
can we stay on defense real quick? I'm sorry, Greg.
Where do you want to go? Tell me.
It's your show.
Doesn't matter to me. Where do you want to go?
Can we talk about Jalen Sneed? And
let's talk about Jalen Sneed.
And let's talk about what kind of defense are we going to try to play. So it's like we got Rover, we're recruiting all these kids, but he's
another guy where it's like, where does he fit? Right? Like that's another one where you're not really sure. Is he going to be a will? Like is he we're going to put him on first down at will linebacker and we're going to feel good about that, like to open the game. Are we going to do that? Or is it like, I mean, and defense has a lot of guys like this. and I guess I'm curious to get both of your thoughts on that, is because I feel like there are so many players, Jalen Sneed being one of them, that are like super talented, but where are they going to go, right? And they recruit this way, right? So it lends itself, right? Like I feel like they're always going to be in this situation where you're asking yourself, okay, love this guy. Josh Burnham's a good example. The Jalen Sneed's a good example. I think Jaden Osbury's a good example, right? And then in this current recruiting class, we talked about it a little bit, like Teddy Rizak, Kennedy Urlacher, Tabron Benny Powell. Like, love the athleticism, love the physical makeup, right? Where are they going to play? Where do they fit? And Jalen Sneed, I think, is a perfect example of that. So, Mike, go ahead and get into it.
Yeah, well, and then don't forget about Golden Scheme, guys. So it's fairly complex, a lot of checks, checking in, checking out, motion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like you have all these young kids that are multiple. They can wear a lot of hats for you on defense, but then are they having to learn 2.5 schemes and Golden's complex thing? Jamie, jump in.
Well, I was going to say that's the one thing, is that because if you look at the linebackers this year, right, like Kaiser's the only like vet. He's the only guy who's, played. He's going to be his third year, under Golden. And I mean, technically it'll be Sneed's third year, but it'll be his second year playing. And Sneed came in as a guy who, I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen anyone who played linebacker as a sophomore, put his hand in the ground as like
the end,
a D end as a junior, and then played single high free safety as a senior in high school. You just don't see a lot of that. I mean, whatever. No shots to the high school. Like, do what you got to do to win. But like, he didn't specialize, so it was, he had to come in, and it was like he was coming in fresh, right? Like it was all this stuff was new to him, and I do think, yes, it is good to have being multiple is great. I mean, that's what you want. Obviously, you want guys who can do different roles, and that's why, you recruit all these guys, because you want to have, someone like, okay, well, this guy can match up with tight on this, but he can also rush off the edge here. He can do this. Like, you want to be able to do that. That makes you harder to prepare for as a defense, because you don't know what this guy's doing, and you can match personnel and you can do these different things with it. But the problem is that you don't want to get guys that can only play sub packages, right? Like, that can only fit into this thing, and they can do these different things on third down because you have more freedom on third down. So right now, to me, Jalen Sneed is just a third down player. Like, he didn't show anything. Like, 40% of his snaps last year were as a D lineman, basically.
Just rushing. Right? Yep.
Yeah. And really, he wasn't even that good at that. He's got a great get off, right? Obviously, the guy's explosive. He's a great athlete, but he never had a real rush plan or anything like that.
They never. I don't think he's allowed, Jamie, to get off of that contain outside track. It's everything's, you want to work vertical all the time, but it's like, let the kid spin inside and loop a 3 technique out. I mean, at the end of the season, it was just him just running upfield.
Yeah. And I think too, one of the things when you watch him in camp and when he was playing off the ball at will, right? And you see him blitzing from there, and that was that's exciting stuff there, because he is explosive and he times it up well, and he's a guy who's going to, similar to Maris in a lot of ways, where he can run through a back, for blitz pickup, so he can do some of that stuff. But I don't see him being able to do much more than that. I haven't seen that from him. Inside run game, he looks lost to me. He looks like he doesn't know recognition. He's not seeing stuff. It's not happening for him. It hasn't clicked for him yet. And some guys, it takes other times, right? To be able to do that, right?
Yeah, this is what I want to talk about. It's like your boy over here. I'm a big shot recruit, And I swear to God, fellas, I was a 3-year varsity starter at the best high school program, Joliet Catholic in Illinois. Dude, I got to Notre Dame and did not know what an A gap was. I didn't know anything. So it was like, it was just see ball, get ball. You talk about Snead playing middle high safety, middle free safety. It's like they left him 8 yards deep. He was like behind, he was a linebacker behind the linebacker, not quite. And it was just, he was untouched. It was just flow to the ball. But when I talk about like golden scheme and how important Snead is he a will? Is he a rover? All I could tell you is in terms of the way that roster is constituted, he's the only MF on that team that's suited to play rover. And you could talk about Jack Kaiser can play rover, but in terms of Jalen's ability to flip his hips, run the length, most importantly, like kind of in those throwing alleys, it's like his development, finding him a home at rover lets us play that base defense. You don't have a guy, so it's like we live in nickel, you know? And like Tariq Bracy was like super important for us. Thomas Harper, super important for us. It's like, can we keep banking on finding these money nickels year in and year out? Or can we actually play a base defense from time to time? You know what I'm saying? But in terms of physical ability, I think Jalen is your rover, and it's like stick him there and let him develop. And then you talk about, or I've mentioned Kaiser, and that's what you said, Jamie, like he's the only old guy in the room, the only vet. That mix up, I think Kaiser doesn't really leave the field a lot because it's like if we're going first down, maybe I put Drake Bowen or KVA at Mike. They're still learning. I got Jack at will to get everybody lined up. We go third down, third and obvious. Can I put Jack at Mike? And then I can put an Osbury, put a Snead, put an athlete at will that can run and cover. But I think, you know, Jack's a really important piece. I have a little bit of concern about him. Sorry, I'm like turning the page to Jack Kaiser, but I saw him in the bowl game, bro. And there's a couple times he would get in traffic, you know, having to like engage with blockers. And it was like, yikes.
Yeah.
It was like a little bit, whereas you guys would say, we're going to monitor that.
Yeah. We're going to monitor.
Yeah. I'm going to monitor.
The thing with Kaiser is like he's always had those like big production and little snaps, right? He's always had that. He's been a production guy. The thing is, though, is like it's always been next to Bertrand or it's always been next to Marist, right? It's never like the best linebacker on the field for us and the most experienced guy is Jack Kaiser, you know, whereas Bertrand, like he always kind of had that. And Marist always kind of had that. Like they were able to operate just kind of as the key guys, whereas Kaiser's always been kind of supplemental to the rest of the defense. Like what happens, like when Mike's talking about what happens when he is the Mike and it all has to work from him, right? Like what happens then, you know, and it's like you said, if he's going to be the guy who gets everyone into the right spot and all, you know, all that. Okay, so we have KVA and or Drake Bowen at Mike or whatever. Well, then Kaiser's over at will. Like, and it kind of plays into, you know, the Snead and Osbury thing. When do they get to learn will? Like, when does Snead get to learn actually how to play will? Because I feel like all of last year, it was, you know, I'm sure he took some will reps, like in practice, whatever the case may be. But, like, he's really just like, hey, you're our third down guy. Like, when is he actually going to learn it? You know, when is he actually learning rover? And I feel like a lot of these guys, like, so again, to get back to Rizak and kind of the players that they're recruiting, like Rizak and Tabron and Benny Powell, especially, like they are in search, and not just them, but like everyone is in search of JOK because he was the cheat code. Yep. He could cover the slot, and and he could be your third linebacker as well, right? Like he made so much easier for them that they could cover up a whole bunch of deficiencies, and then they could basically, you know, whatever the offense wanted to do, you just leave him out there and he could do whatever they needed. It's like that to me is my question about linebackers. Is like they have so many guys and like just not enough spots, and they're not practicing those spots in order to get them to get to that point.
And that's real quick, Jim. That's what we're saying. It's like, you know, Jalen's got to get caught up. It's like it's year 3, man. Yeah. And it's like give him a chance, Greg. It's like leave him at rover, and it's like let Osbury get the will. I mean, Osbury's not a rover. He's too small, and he's an awesome player, but he don't have the length to play in the passing lanes and all that. And then the only other thing about but gosh, is JOK, he's so good, dude.
He's
but
so good, yeah.
He's so quick. I mean, his quickness is just like, it doesn't even make sense. But there's something going on with Snead, and it's a good thing, where it's like, he gets out there and he might not know what he does, but he creates some chaos, and he has energy and he has bounce. And I'm like, we talk about, you're losing leadership in a JD Bertrand. Kaiser's kind of going to be like your sort of militaristic, dutiful kind of guy, makes plays. But I think that there's a chance that like Jalen can provide some leadership with that energy and bring that to a defense, that kind of youthful energy. And I think that over time that could really morph into like leadership. It's just something I see, something I kind of sniff occasionally. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, that does stand out about him. I mean, it's funny because there's a lot of times too, when you see him out there, like he missed a lot of tackles where you're like, man, he is flying in there, but it's just like, he's just out of control a little bit, where he could have put up like way more numbers than he did. He just hasn't learned to kind of throttle down the way that he needs to. But I think JOK is the perfect example of somebody that he was so obviously talented and special. And but also too, like, we had heard before 2019 season, like, this guy, like, he does not know the defense well. Like, he does not, he's not there where he needs to be. Like, it's like Drew White is like telling him, like, this is the play. You got this. Like, that was him at the beginning of that 20. And that was also year 3 for him. People forget because, he redshirted. He came in, he was like 190 pounds. Right. And he was like, and then he broke his foot the next year. Right. So he didn't play his first 2 years, but then that third year, and it was just so obvious that he was like, I mean, it was obvious right away that he was special as an athlete, but you saw him like covering like Lawrence Keys on like a vertical route. And you're like, okay, no other linebackers on the team have a hope in hell of doing that. And even in that first game against Louisville, he made some splash plays, but he also like had some terrible run fits in the game, and they got like gashed Notre Dame bad, but they didn't like yank him and say like that was it. And then as the season went on, he grew, and he didn't even play, which is insane when you think about it. He didn't play third down. He wasn't on the third down package. He wasn't in their nickel package that year. He had 13 and a half tackles for loss. He did play on third down, and obviously played a huge role on that next year. But so in that sense too, they threw him into the fire, and he got that experience, and then obviously he built off of that and became great in the next year.
You take your, and that's, I guess, even so many of this, I mean, it's kind of a young team, and it's like, whether we're talking about D linemen, it's like, you got to take your lumps with some of these guys. You got to have a confidence in yourself as a coaching staff to just take some lumps, man. I mean, like my junior year, Derek Curry was my Drew White, right? Yeah. Derek Curry played a big time program at Sealy, Texas. He got me lined up. I mean, even we're 5th year seniors, he'd get me lined up a third of the time. I didn't quite know what I was supposed to be doing. And like my junior year, like there was a play, we were playing Pittsburgh, and I bit so hard on play action, just running around with my hair on fire, I got a freaking sack. And I got yelled at, but I was just like, I got caught on play action because I was coming down. So, but it ended up being a good play. And it's like, it's a mental error on my grade sheet, but it's a plus play in the stat sheet, right? We get off the field. So I don't know. I just think that Jalen Snead, his development allows us to actually play with a rover. And if you don't develop him, we're just going to play more nickel. Unless we move to a 3-3-5, which is me with my tinfoil hat, just because I see, Greg, you talked about the Rezaks, the Benny Powells, the Kendi Urlachers. There's some of these guys, it's like they're not safeties. Luke Talich could be another one of these guys. It's like, to me, they're alley players in a 3-3-5. They're space players, and it's like there's so many of them on the roster. If we're going to have 9-10 linebackers on the roster, and if we're only going to play nickel, you got 10 guys competing for 2 spots. And so I'm still curious to see how that shakes out. If we could have a 3-3-5 with Freeman's background as one of those sub packages. I don't know. I just see the recruits, the body types that they're bringing in. It's like, sure, they could be a will, but it's just much easier for me to slot them into just downhill alley guys.
Yeah, I just feel like they're looking for that cheat code guy who can kind of do everything. And to Jamie's point, JOK didn't play third down in 2019 because when they went to third down, they brought in Kyle Hamilton, and that was a good transition.
He pretty well.
He was pretty good in third down in 2019. That worked out good for the Notre Dame football team. But yeah, I think Notre Dame is looking for that extra kind of edge on defense with guys like Teddy Rizek and Kennedy Urlacher. And you want that extra edge. And so you can get an extra edge for your website, for your show, for what you got going on the Patreon, Mike. You can get an extra edge with VSRmediacompany.com, which is founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh. VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshot, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at VSRmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. Do we want to talk offense? Do we want to go to the offensive side of the ball, guys? We got wide receivers. We've got running backs. Mike loves the running backs on this football team. I mentioned we talked about it on the last show. Jeremiah Love, incredible. Like, I love the way he runs. What he showed, I thought he showed a lot. And my hypothesis specifically, and I think Jamie agreed with this, Mike, I'm curious to get your thoughts, is, Dylan McCullough was very adamant kind of in the preseason about, like, you got to be a full running back. You got to be about it, right? You got to be about it. You got to run in there. You got to put your head down, and you got to go get the yards that are available to you. And I think Jeremiah Love took that a little too much to heart. I think every run was trying to prove, like, I'm about it. Whereas, like, he could be a little bit more patient. He could look to bounce it a little bit more, be a little bit more shifty. And I'm wondering if we'll see that in 2024. And obviously, Jadarian Price, like, coming off the Achilles, I think a lot of people are excited about him. And then I think Kedron Young's going to be he's going to be a ball player. I like him a lot. And of course, Jabron Payne as well with Aeneas Williams is also on campus. So, Mike, you mentioned you're excited about that running back room. Tell me what you're excited about.
First of all, yeah, I think I did listen to your episode where you mentioned that Dylan McCullough Love aspect, and that if you're going to play a true freshman at back, obviously you're concerned about holding on to the ball. And then, play within the framework of the offense, just not that they're teaching these kids to be robots, but it's just like a very conservative approach. So I would agree with you. I was watching the bowl game the other night. I stay up late, but I was watching that bowl game, and there was one play where he bounced that thing. Like, he just kind of let it free flow play. And yeah, he's an electric player. It does bug me. We all love Jeremiah Love, but it does bug me that he didn't really break one. We were waiting and waiting.
It's kind of shocking, actually, that he didn't. Because especially considering, like, this was a pretty explosive running game when you look at the numbers, like, from an explosiveness standpoint. And like, Audric Estime had like a ton of 10+ yard runs, and I feel like Jeremiah Love had a lot of good, like, 5-yard runs, and he just didn't. A
lot of 8-yard, a lot of stuff.
Yeah, like, I can't believe he didn't bust like a 70-yarder. Like, that's stunning to me.
Yeah, even in that bowl game, I mean, there was a play that's blocked beautifully, and like, the backside defensive tackle gets off and just barely gets a hold of his legs.
It was like the opener. It was like the first play of the game or whatever it was.
Yeah,
they could have gone for 90 on the first play.
He's close, and I just think he's another one of these kids. I saw they had a little YouTube clip. This Destroying is like a YouTube personality.
Oh, yeah.
Successful YouTube personality. He came into Notre Dame's building, and he's like, what is he, a college kicker or something like that? And he
He was a kicker at like UCF or something.
Yeah.
God bless him, right? He's making a ton of money on YouTube, but he goes into Notre Dame's building. Tobias Merriweather, Jeremiah Love are giving him a tour of the facilities. And he's like, oh, yeah, what do you bench or whatever? And Jeremiah Love, the way I interpret it, like he alluded to the fact that like, he didn't really train much in high school. Like he wasn't really a big weight room guy. So like, I just think there's that much more potential with him, you know, to kind of get rocked up with his body, all this other stuff. It's a great group. I'll just kick it off. I think by year's end, you got Love at 1, and I think you have Kedron Young at 2.
Passing price.
Dude, just saying. I don't know if there's room for Payne, big picture. I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts. We'll talk about this I know Mike Frank loves Aeneas Williams. You know, he's like his Kyron Williams kind of 2.0. I think that's what Mike's thinking in his mind. But when I looked at Aeneas's film, I just don't know if I saw like the just speed. Yeah, he's nicely built, great hands, competitive, tough runner, balance, all those things. But I just didn't see like the sheer speed with him. But Kedron Young, you know, 5'10", 217, I think is what he's listed at. It's like, that's a running back. You know, that's how, if I'm creating a player in Madden, that's kind of what I want him to look like.
Yeah, I think with Young is just different than everybody else too in the room. So that really helps him, I think, right? Like that's just being that different, just how Estime is different, right? And he's not quite Estime, but like, I mean, he's got that same physicality, that size, and also he's probably got, I think he's got a little bit more juice than him, which is, it always seems insane when you say that because like Audric broke like a 90-yarder or whatever last year, but you know, he wasn't a threat to break 90 every time. And where Young, I think, is going to be a little bit more of a threat there. I think he's got a little bit more longer speed. I am a really big fan of JD Price. And I think that the main thing is that he came off the friggin' Achilles last year and still looked pretty good, but did not look like the same. It didn't have the exact kind of juice that he had prior to that. So I want to see if he kind of gets that back because I really think as a receiver, he could be like really special too. Like he's a guy that if you get matched up on a backer, like it's going to be over. Like
he's their screen guy.
Yeah.
Every time they were running a screen, they were trying to throw it to him. So that's notable to me.
And I mean, and obviously Jeremiah Love, I just think there's just so much more there. Like you guys said too. And I, you know, we were talking about like, you know, high school 40 times and all that too. He is like a legitimate, like 4.38 laser, like in high school.
Yeah.
The guy can fly. So I just want to see him in space a bit more too, because like that touchdown he scored in the bowl game too, right? Where he just makes the one guy miss. And it's just like, well, you end up making 2 or 3 guys miss, but like just getting him there, because if he just gets that one area, he could just go. And I think by the end of the year, I don't know how it's going to shake out with all of these guys of like who's going to be, you know, 1, 2, whatever, or 3 or whatever. I would say, I mean, I would lean towards Payne. I just can't see him being, I just think the other guys are better. I just really comes down to it. But I guess it's going to come down to like, do they trust these other guys in blitz pickup and all of this kind of stuff too? Because there obviously was more trust in Payne in that area than there were the other guys.
Too much trust.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But that was, I mean, it was obvious because there was just like no other reason why you wouldn't have put.
No, for sure. Absolutely.
There, right?
That was his role. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how they used him.
So, but I think you know, as we're naming all these guys that we really, really like, it's crazy because they're losing Estime, but I think by the end of the year, it might be the number 1 group on the team, because even in the bowl game, they didn't block it all that well in the bowl game. Like up front, they didn't do like a great job in that game, there was a lot there that they gained like after contact. And I think just there, it's just the right mix of explosiveness and toughness. And I just really, really like what they have there. And I don't know what anyone's going to put up like just crazy numbers, but there are going to be some games where like, man, this guy went for 180 or something, like, you know, and there's going to be that, because I do think you're going to see like a lot of opportunities for them to break stuff. And this is another reason too why I'm excited about Leonard and him as a runner, and how teams are going to have to play him there, which will open up stuff for the running backs. And also too, and I think because Denbrock, I think, does a really good job with pre-snap stuff, pre-snap motion, and setting up, using that to kind of open up things in the running game. And so where those guys get chances at the second level to make a move and then go. So, you know, by just like manipulating safeties and stuff like that. So I'm really, really excited for Notre Dame's running game this year, even though like I do have questions about the O-line and how that is going to kind of work itself out. But I kind of think if like the O-line can kind of just like carry water for a little bit and just keep going and going, that by the end of the year, like they might just be like rolling with the running game.
There's a lot. Let's take 2 steps back, because there's a lot. There's so many bodies in that room. Love, we all love. And then people, and I think it's a lazy, but it's natural to try to connect Estime to Young just based off of their build, you know, that kind of they're jacked, right? But like Estime always, to me, a lot faster than you thought he would be. He kind of ran flat-footed a lot, like he was sort of slapped the ground, and he always played like narrow, like this is his legs. You know, for a kid that's built like that, it's like I see Young plays with a little bit wider of a base, more like a Kyron Williams, where they can kind of like step out of tackles, they can move better laterally. Just their play styles are different. Estime was more of like a linear guy, right? But I really like Young. And then we're talking about like pass pro for sure. We're talking about the run game not being blocked up perfect. Gotcha. And then you got like Riley Leonard in that mix. So it's like, who's going to be the blitz pickup guy? We'll figure it out. How important is that blitz pickup guy when you have an athlete at quarterback and Riley that can get himself out of trouble, right? You know, you don't have that statue that we've kind of had in years past. And I think that the big conversation with so many of these position groups on the team is like talent versus trust. You know, it's like, if it's not blocked up perfect, Jamie, the kid's got enough talent to make it happen, you know? And it's like, when you're talking about special players, like we know Love is special. I believe that Keydron Young is special. You know, like it doesn't need to be blocked up. They can make you miss. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that's those coaching staff striking that balance between they trust the guy to execute the play, but then he also has enough talent, just God-given ability to make something happen if it's not blocked up perfectly. So that's just it's a good room. Javon Payne, I think I talked about this with Singer the other day. Dude, was he that good at the third down role where it's like he's cemented going into 2024?
I didn't think so.
No.
Agreed.
And well, like Jacob Paulus brought up the pass protection. When I said they trusted him too much, I'm not even talking about his ability with the ball. He was not a good pass blocker. I mean, just like there are too like busts in pass protection, right? It's one thing to you know, make the block and then get beat, you know, later on, like a physical error. When we're talking about like mental errors, like players just running free. And then when he does, like there's whiffs there too. Like that's, to me, it's like, look, if you're going to be the third down guy and we're going to put you in pass protection, you better be like 90%, 80%, right? And always going the right way. Like, because there's not enough with the ball in his hands to make it where it's justify
it. No.
Yeah. Like you said, Mike, where it's like, oh, the talent is there to overcome. It's like it's not. That's the thing. It's like there's you're getting the negative without the upside.
Well, here's the one thing too, right? With Payne, and when they would give him the ball on third down, and I think, you see like Detroit Lions, one of the big things for them this year, like they ran on third down more than anyone in the NFL, right? That was something that you watch any Detroit Lions game, Mike Frank will tell you, whatever. They run more on third down than anyone. Well, they're giving the ball to Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery. So they're getting maximize they're being able to take advantage of it. So it's 3rd and 12, and they're going to get 8 or whatever. So then they can go on 4th and 4 or whatever, right? Where they would run it with Payne, and it's like, 3rd and long, he gets 4. It's like, well, then now you can't go for it on 4. Like you have to, because I don't know how many times with Kyren Williams, and obviously he's seen that in the NFL too, but especially in 2020 and 2021, where Notre Dame really didn't have anything dialed up good on 3rd and long, but they checked it to Kyren and he got 9 when they needed 7. He could just do that. And I just don't think, especially because you have these other guys that you've seen them make something out of nothing. Give them the opportunities there, because unless Payne can do that and show he can do that, and I'm saying he's not like talented or whatever, he just didn't show it enough to keep that job, or definitely to be like, he's got to be the guy, and did pass block enough, all that too. But especially I don't even think it's bad to be like, okay, well, if Love's in the game on 3rd down, he's going to run a pattern. Fine. Make sure they cover him, because if they don't, then he can maybe do something. Like, they just have it. I just feel like it's not using all your resources there. And I just think that I hope that changes this year, because I just, Payne is, you don't want to get on these guys. It's not his fault he's being put in that situation or whatever, but I just think the other guys just showed much, much more when it came to like making defenders miss, getting yards after contact, all of that stuff.
Yeah,
I think the first one last thing on the Payne, because the perfect example of what I'm talking about, and I think we're all talking about, is like 3rd and 10, Clemson opening drive. They run, I think it was duo. They might have run duo there, but they had a good box. They dropped the safety, right? So he's one-on-one with the safety in the hole, and he just lowers the shoulder, and it's like, he gets an extra yard, but he was like the worst back to have in that situation. Like every other back that they have, by the numbers, this isn't me just pontificating. Like the stats show he was the worst at missed tackles forced on the team amongst the running backs. Like you could have any other player in that situation, and they're more likely to make the player miss in the hole. He doesn't make it. They end up kicking a field goal, right? And so like that's the difference, where it's like, where's the upside? It's just
I would say even with Devin Ford, I think showed more. I mean, he didn't get a ton of opportunities, but showed more.
Yeah. So we'll see how that shakes out. And the usage of the backs, I think it's like a broker. I mean, listen to any podcast, read any article. It's like, I think all of us talking heads are in the same boat in terms of like the usage of the running backs. The last couple of years, it's been a bunch of head scratchers. But Jamie, I don't want to gloss over like the impact that Riley Leonard makes in that run game, and just even you talking about, okay, it's 3rd down, we're gonna put Love out on a route. It's like, well, walk him out of the box. He displaces, safety comes down, linebacker kicks out. It's like, okay, now we can one route, make one quick read with Riley, and he can put his foot down. It's like a half-ass quarterback draw. It's like the things that he allows you to do scheme wise. You're going to take another defender out of the box. There's never been a threat. Last couple of years, there hasn't been any sort of a threat quarterback running the ball in RPO game. That's going to change this year. So it's just that whole group. And let's talk wide receivers, but that running back group specifically. And I tend to I like to stir the pot a little bit, throw some shit out there. And, I'm just telling you, I think if Kedron Young absolutely has the potential to pass up Price. You could talk about the Achilles thing, but then go back and look at the high school film between the two. I'd still prefer Young. I just think he's he's going to be a really good back for us, and like just a traditional Ezekiel Elliott just type running back, can kind of do a little bit of everything: power, quickness, hands, whatever.
I mean, the good thing about running back is it's like kind of easy to evaluate, right? Like in practice, like it's like, are you getting the yards or are you not, right? Like, are you making people miss or are you not, right? And so that's why I think it's, as long as you know the plays and things of that nature. But yeah, let's talk about the wide receivers too, because this is one where Bo Collins is not going to be in spring ball, right? So he's staying at Clemson. He's finishing up his degree at Clemson. He's going to be coming in the summer, right? So that means, like, to me, he's going to be your boundary guy. But if he's not the boundary guy, who's running that in the spring, right? What does Notre Dame want to do there? Like, do they want to again move Jaden Thomas out there, which I think me and Jamie both agree, and I'm interested to get Mike's thoughts on this. Like, he's better as a slot guy because of so much he can do in the running game as well. So you want him closer to the box. Do you put Jaden Greathouse out there, right? Do you want him in that spot? And then there's obviously the natural role for Jordan Faison. He can be in the slot. You have Chris Mitchell, who I think most people feel is going to be to the field. That's going to be his best spot. So, but I'm curious to think of how do you guys think it matches best? Like, do you think they should have Jaden Greathouse rep on the boundary on that side and allow Jaden Thomas to be more of a slot guy? Or do you feel like Jaden Greathouse's better role is in the slot? He needs to get more work there. Put Jaden Thomas out there. Obviously, Deion Colsey is still there, but like, do you want him taking all those first team reps while like everyone's splitting in the slot? Like, so I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on that.
Well, I think one of the things that, and this was something that I think when you watch like LSU last year, is they move the guys around a lot. Like, because they didn't really have like a dominant boundary guy. That wasn't what, so like Malik Neighbors was like 50% in the slot. Like he's, 50% in the slot. And like, you were talking about that thing, Greg, about like, all those slot fades that they ran too. Like Brian Thomas, lined up in the slot a lot and won there too. So I don't know. Like, I mean, it's good to have it's obviously it's good to have like a defined boundary, Michael Floyd type. I mean, no one's going to argue that, right? Like it's great to have that guy. You get Chase Claypool, you could, throw it up on the boundary and you think he's going to come down with it. That's great. But if you don't have that guy, I think you could kind of like mix it up a little bit because, like you said, with Thomas, that value he brings is like, it was so funny listening to, Gary Danielson in the bowl game, how he was like, this guy's built like a 10. And I was like, well, thanks for just watching Notre Dame right now for the first time, because, but that is the impression people get with him. People don't realize how big he is. Like, he is big and he is a weapon in that area. But also too, he's a guy that if you line up like a tiny nickel on him, he's going to win against that guy. Like, cause he's bigger than him and he's an intelligent player. So you can move him around, but also too, I think like when we talk about like what Denbrock does with hunting matchups and all that kind of stuff too, I think Jaden Greathouse is probably the guy right now coming into the spring where I'm like, he's the guy you probably want to hunt matchups with, because I think he's the kind of guy who's going to win one-on-one a lot. He knows how to win one-on-one. Like, he knows how to separate at the catch point. He's a guy who has way more juice than I think people give credit for. Like, you've seen some of these plays that he made after the catch. And that's really like, he led the team in touchdowns, receiving touchdowns last year. And he missed like half the year and was like stuck on the boundary there too. Like, he's, I think, someone who you want to be able to kind of move around. So I guess it's just like, I think as long as you think Collins will be there, and I mean, he is going to be there in the fall, I don't think they have to worry about it too much in the spring. I mean, Colsey's going to be there this spring too. And it's another chance for Colsey to although I think he might be running out the clock to get, his degree and then go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is an opportunity for Goolsby to actually get a ton of reps there, and we'll see, because I don't think Micah Gilbert is just too much to expect. Just a freshman on the boundary. It's just, man, it's a tough job. And, like I said, unless you're Michael Floyd, there's just not too many guys that can do that.
Yeah.
I tend to agree with your first statement, Jamie. And I think maybe people sometimes make too much of who's boundary, who's slot, who's field. It's like, I swear we've seen Faison make plays playing boundary receiver. Yeah, I said it well over a year ago. I didn't think we were going to see Goolsby. When Goolsby got passed up, I was like, I don't think we're ever going to see him again. I was never blown away with Colsey's film. He was always like a run and catch guy, just run underneath it. And I never saw, even in the high school film, I never saw like when you talk about juice with Greathouse, I just never saw a love for competing, a love of the game with Goolsby. It's just many athletes as you've been around. I never felt like he had it. But like when we're talking about boundary, do you agree you've got to be able to threaten somebody to run by somebody?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't know if Jaden Thomas, to me, I love him on crossers. Yes, I love him in the run game as kind of an accessory kind of gadget guy, Swiss Army knife. But he's more of like a build-up speed guy to me. I don't think if I'm a opposing corner for Louisville that week, I'm going to sit on a lot of routes with Jaden.
Yeah.
You feel me on that?
100%. 100%.
So I think we agree that like Thomas is your slot, box, move, H back. What is he? He'll have a fun NFL career.
Yeah.
But in terms of boundary, I like Bo Collins. He's a kid he has like natural bounce to him in terms of his movement. Like he's a bouncy kid. I can see him going up and competing for a ball. Same thing I would say for Greathouse. I think Greathouse has enough speed to threaten you vertical a little bit. He's a technician in terms of his run routes. He'll compete for the ball. I mean, I like Greathouse in the boundary, sure. And then you mentioned Micah Gilbert. He's one of these dudes that he reminds me of like, this is a fun comp, but he's like I think when I was watching his film, he looks like a faster, like Anquan Bolden. Like he can do a lot with the ball, like after the catch. Like you throw a little bubble to him, let some magic happen. Sorry, Greg, am I cutting you off?
No.
Okay. And then the field guy. Got to be Cam Williams. It's got to be. You talk about Chris Mitchell, 4.4 speed, high school track times. I don't see it. I watched the film. I don't necessarily see it. I think Cam Williams, man. I mean, if you talk about most important recruits in this class, whether it's CJ Carr, whether it's KVA, I mean, to me, it's Cam Williams. I mean, he's probably the fastest guy in that room based off what I see on that high school film and his track times, his like biomechanics, the way that kid runs. I mean, he can be an electric player for us to the field. I truly believe that. And I think he's a kid that'll come in and play as a freshman.
I definitely think he's faster than everybody. I think that's true. I mean, I'm interested in Saldate a little bit from a long speed standpoint. But Cam has an acceleration that is just kind of special, which that pops to me, right? Like the Chris Mitchell thing is interesting because so his high school times, I'm a track guy, a former track guy myself, so I'm like really into this, almost like in a nerdy way. But like his high school track times are very similar to like Kevin Austin, and I didn't see Kevin Austin as like this is a burner, like I just never saw that. I thought he was plenty fast, right? Now the difference between like Austin and Chris Mitchell is Kevin Austin's much bigger, right? He's much more physical, right? But I never believed in a million years that Kevin Austin would run 4.37 at the combine. Like, no way. Like, no way. Like, I didn't see that. Now it's different. And like, I don't think Kevin Austin played that fast, right? So it kind of doesn't really matter to me how fast he ran at the combine. I don't remember him doing like that Will Fuller stuff where it's like, hey, this guy is a smoke show, right? Like I never thought that about Kevin Austin. I do think that about Cam Williams, and I don't think that about Chris Mitchell. So I think your assessment is fair in that regard. But I do believe he does have a little bit. I think he does have a little bit more juice, just in terms of like getting separation at the separation point than I think Kevin Austin did. For whatever reason, he just didn't have that. But I do think he does. I would be shocked.
He's a little more crafty, right, Greg?
Yeah. Like I think he's a little bit better in that situation. I'd be stunned if Cam Williams was like ready in 2024. That would be great for Notre Dame. But
why would you be so stunned though? Why would you be so stunned?
Just because there's a lot that goes into. So there's a difference between like Will Fuller wasn't ready and EQ wasn't ready, right? Like it just like playing the field for Mike Denbrock is a lot different than playing the field for like Tommy Rees. Because Mike Denbrock is a field slot guy a lot more than boundary. Like so, like when you guys were talking about that, I was thinking like 2014, right? It was Will Fuller, 76 catches, and then it was Procise and Carlisle in the slot, right? And then it was Chris Brown on the other side.
The field was always
right. Like in 2015, and then you look at 2015, it was the same kind of deal. And then you look at LSU this year, Thomas and Neighbors field slot, right? Like those two positions. That's where they put those guys. So I think it's just a lot to be putting on the field player. Which isn't to say he won't play at all. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, I think the majority of reps will go to Mitchell. But time will tell on that. Jamie, thoughts, concerns?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you with I mean, I do think that, I mean, long term, no one has even close to the ceiling that Williams has. I don't know. So on the roster, I mean, I think he can be just absolutely special just because he's got that type of speed. And he also has that little bit too, when the ball's in the air, he can separate as well, which is why I'm like so excited about him. But I think partially based on his offense that he played in high school and how he was used, like a ton of like screen game stuff. I mean, I guess they could use him. I mean, I would love to see him just get some touches, just that kind of stuff as well, just to kind of mix in. But it's just also just one of those things where it's like, man, there are just so few freshmen that it's not just a Notre Dame thing. It's like everywhere. Like you look at, there's very few AJ Green and Julio Jones and Michael Floyd's, the guys that came in and were like, man, this guy's a dude right away. It's just traditionally, even the guys who have been, so Marvin Harrison Jr., the best prospect, wide receiver prospect in how many years, right? All this kind of stuff. This guy barely played as a freshman, right? Like, I understand they had guys, but I mean, probably should have got him some more touches. You know what I mean? Like, it's something about like, it's also, I do blame it on coaches as well for being like, this guy doesn't know all this stuff, so we gotta just, I don't know, like sometimes you just gotta, similar to kind of what we were talking about with Snead.
Yeah,
sometimes you just gotta find something to be like, here's your package, here's 11 plays, you got to know these plays, because when it's coming in, you're gonna have that, like the little bit of the Chris Brown, whatever that we always talk about, right? That they used Chris Brown and it was the right kind of situation for that. So I would love to see that with this year, regardless. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask both of you a question? And I don't recall watching Michael Floyd's high school highlight film, but if I put you on the spot, how does Cam Williams stack up to Floyd coming out of high school?
I think. Sorry, Greg, if you want to go first.
Floyd was awesome. He was the package, in my opinion. Like he was very good. Like screen game, he at the point of the catch, he was going up for balls. He was different to me. Like to me, I don't know that there's been a wide receiver that Notre Dame has gotten where it's like this guy is the goods. I mean, he was really good.
To me, the big difference is, I mean, Floyd, I mean, just the way he competed on like every single play, you just saw, you're like, oh, the ball is his. It's in the air. The ball is his. He's winning deep. He is like running through guys after the catch, like running away, but then also running through guys, like in a way that you were just like, he is just built different than other guys. And it was just like all aspects where you're like, oh, he could be the quarterback. He could be the running back. He could be anything on this team right now and be the best player. So he was just at a different kind of level where I'm like, Cam Williams is, I mean, it's going to be scary when he adds, 15 pounds or whatever he's going to add over the time when he, develops that. Well, I mean, Floyd kind of already had that armor, heading into it. And
Floyd was like, he also dominated the Army American Bowl. And like, this was back when like everyone did it, it was like a big deal. Like he dominated that.
Yeah.
Like he was different.
Well, and also too, because he was a guy obviously coming from, it was Creighton Durham in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And obviously Minnesota, they're not getting the most love for even though they did produce a lot of dudes and a lot of really high level athletes there, he wasn't getting the same love as some of the other guys. And then he kind of went out and showed they're like, oh yeah, this isn't just like a competition thing. He is just that guy. I don't think they've signed anyone close to him.
Interesting.
Since then. But I mean, I do think Williams, in a year, that's what I'm like. I'm saying like his breakout would probably be 2025 for me. But kind of like turning it back into the Chris Mitchell thing. I have to say, like, I was talking about this with Mike too. And I definitely I don't see someone who runs sub 4.4 when I watch Chris Mitchell on film. But regardless of that, I think if you're coming from like FIU or you're coming from a place like that, and obviously he was like, I think he had the highest single season yards in FIU history, and they got T.Y. Hilton went there and he balled out. So they've had some dudes there, right? But I think if you're coming to a place like Notre Dame or coming to any place like where you're making that jump, you kind of got to be like, I'm the man and I can do this, because if there's any kind of fear going into it, he'll get owned by Ben Morrison and Christian Gray and it's done. And I think like that was the thing with what's his face from Virginia Tech last year. But like he came in and it was like, it's a wrap. I mean, I can't get open against, he was struggling he couldn't get open against Ryan Barnes, right? So it was over for him before it started, right? And with Mitchell, I don't know if he's going to come in and do that. Like, it's one thing to like, yes, he had the monster game against Arkansas. That's awesome. Like, it's good that you make those plays against Power 5 program. That's great. Arkansas's corners aren't the same as Notre Dame's corners. They're not as good. So to me, he is easily the most intriguing guy all of spring to watch. And I'm excited to kind of see where he's at, because obviously you talk and you say that kind of stuff. It's like, you run sub 4.4, whatever. It's like, well, you got to be dusting guys on the field. That's how it is, right? That's you got to back that up. But I like when a guy's like coming from there and he's doing that, because if you don't back up, you get found out quick. And it's, so I'm excited to see him, because regardless of whatever, Cam Williams, Chris Mitchell, whatever, they need a vertical threat. Like they absolutely, and Faison, I think, could provide some of that. Certainly he's a guy who can fly, right? But like just a consistent vertical threat that you're like, teams are like, man, like, like you were saying, Mike, with on the boundary even too, they didn't have anybody they could either just sit on it and just say like, I mean, I know you're running a comeback here because you're not running by me, or they could just say, I'll play press here. I don't care. I can handle you. Like, you're not going to run by me. I just turn around with you. Like, and that was the big thing with Notre Dame last year. And I think that was the ultimately one of the things too that Sam Hartman, you know, I mean, one of the things that he struggled with was like, he didn't have a guy that you could just say, oh, my guy's better than your guy on the outside. And you could just throw it up because he just didn't have that. So, and that, you know, without that, it was like, oh, I gotta do all these other things and I'm not used to.
I will give Chris Mitchell credit. He will compete for the ball. And I think that's, in years past, we've lacked guys with just scary speed. And then in the same breath, guys that necessarily wouldn't go up and compete for a ball, right? I mean, how many interceptions have we seen where it's like the ball's not a great ball, but it's like, go get it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Nothing's perfect. The thing with Chris Mitchell, and like it seems like every year I have like one or two like whipping boys, and I don't want Chris Mitchell to become that. Colsey's already that in the wide receiver room, but like when you're up at the podium, it's like, talk to us about your speed, Chris. And he's like, oh, they'll see. It's like, no, tell me you ran 4.36 last summer or whatever, you know? And nobody even, the whole 4.4 conversation is, I don't know if most college teams, I don't even know if they test that anymore. They're kind of just going off that GPS speed now, best I can tell from kids that I've trained that are in college. And then I just don't think that the average guy reading on a message board, watching a YouTube show has any concept, Greg, for how fast 4.4 is, much less faster than a 4.4. I mean, it's, you know, if you've seen somebody, and I texted a kid, I had him on the Patreon, Ty Isaac. I trained him. You might remember the name from Notre Dame.
Oh, yeah.
Stud running back. So I've been training him since high school, and we're still very close. I'm like, dude, he went to Southern Cal, transferred to Michigan. I'm like, how many guys between those two schools that you played with ran sub 4.4? He's like, maybe 3. Yeah, I'm just telling you, that's crazy, crazy fast. But he will go compete the ball. And then, Jamie, you're talking about, you know, the guy from Virginia Tech that came here to get his master's degree or whatever, yeah. Right? I'm hearing these saws going in the house. If it's not going to be Chris Mitchell, it has to be Cam Williams. Yes, or who? Faison to the field?
It would not stun me if they put Faison to the field, because you want Great House slot, you want Thomas slot, and you're going to have tight ends too. Like, you want to get the ball to Faison. I wouldn't stun me if they gave him field snaps.
This is what I'm going to say about the wide receiver group. Cam Williams, to me, is the only guy in that room that, like, when I watch an Alabama play, think about an Alabama receiver. What are they? 6'1", 187 pounds, 193 pounds, huge striders. Think of Devontae Smith, you know, like, they could just open up right now and go. Cam Williams is the only guy on our team that runs like an all SEC receiver. Just can go now.
He doesn't have like the jukiness of this player, but like Jerry Jeudy, he's like, to me, he's very similar to that. He's just like the same kind of body type, the same kind of running style. Like I could see that. So I agree with you.
You know what I mean, Greg, as a track guy, when I look at like the knee drive and like where the foot comes down, I mean, Cam Williams can frickin' run, man. And then the only other thing, like in terms of who knows how this is going to shake out, and this is what the offseason's for, right? Just to frickin' guess, make educated guesses. Talking about the tight end, I forget who brought it up, but like Eli Raridan can really run. And we saw in the bowl game, I think down in the red zone, twice they gave him just one-on-one jump ball fade opportunities down there. He's another guy that's interesting. What is he going to be in the pass game? Because his body type is different than really anybody else. All the other guys are substantially shorter, you know, more like intermediate routes, whereas I think Eli can really stretch a field and create problems for people.
He's a big, like, long speed guy to me.
Yeah.
Like he's twitchy, but like he's a guy, like once he gets rolling, I hate covering tight ends. It's the worst. Like they're like long and they're also wide. You can't get around them. You got like they're long arms. Like he's a guy, like I watch him and it's not like I'm totally afraid of him running away from me, but it's just like he's so long. Like I can't get to the ball, and that's
You
an
can't
Eli
cover
Raritan thing.
you can't cover all of him.
Right.
You can't
I
cover all of them.
I could be on his back, but I can't get to the ball. And it's
Mhm.
like really annoying. And it's so like that's the difficult thing about him. What were we gonna say, Jamie?
I'm just going to say that Eli Raritan is probably one of those guys that if you're looking at guys that no one is really talking about as like, oh, this guy's going to be a star like this year, he could be a star this year. Like that,
Yeah.
that is absolutely like, I mean, people forget the guy tore his ACL senior year of high school and then tore it his freshman year too. I think if he didn't tear it, obviously in his freshman year, people would for sure put him like he would have been on there. Like I don't think Holden Stays would have got that run. I think Raritan would have been above him at that time. So I'm really intrigued to kind of see him hopefully like with a full year of health. And he does have that, like he has that catch radius, right? He has that catch radius. And like, I think even, I can't remember, it was the game that, was it the Pitt game that he had the, the touchdown where they
In the corner?
they
Yeah.
ran yeah. Right.
Yep.
Well, even in that game too, right, where he had just like a couple
Actually, no,
plays.
it was Wake. It was Wake.
It was Wake. Yes, it was Wake. Right. Yeah. So, so even on that too, where you're just like on crossers and stuff, where he's got something after the catch too. Like, and he's a big, strong guy. Like he's going to run through. Like DBs are going to try to tackle him and have a tough time. So I mean, I just really hope that, because I think Evans, you have to wait and see with him, but like if Evans and Raritan are like, I've always been like, man, like Cole Kmet never got the kind of, part of the reason why Cole Kmet didn't have the career at Notre Dame that he had was because like, well, they need to throw the ball more before his, he was tight end one, right? Like, so you got these guys that are super, super freaking talented. Like, give these guys some more run. And I hope that, he gets like kind of the targets that reflect that.
And it's, Jamie, you mentioned Holden Stays, and when Mitch went down, Holden got that run. And Holden is another guy going, we've been going for an hour and 45. Like RJ Oben, the defensive end, like with the inseam, like Holden Stays had like incredibly long legs. It's hard for a player like that to start and stop. And there was a play where he ran a stop route and it got picked off, like, or maybe it was an out pattern. But like a Holden Stays is more of a vertical type. I think Raritan's more of a vertical type, whereas Mitch Evans, he's almost like a boundary receiver, like those intermediate. He'll go compete for the ball. Yeah. Michael Mayer, not really going to scare you running by you. So it's just a nice combo with the two of those. But when everybody talks about the wide receiver room, and it's like getting into 40 times. Like I bumped into Eli's father, who I played with, Scott, and he told me, and you guys might have this data, but like his 10-yard split was like in the 1.4 range, which is
which is insane. That's insane.
It's literally, Jamie, it's like defies physics. Yeah. The guy's 6'7", 250. It's running 1.410. And again, for folks that don't know, it's just like it's stupid fast, stupid quick. So if that's true,
it's like elite NFL edge, like
burst.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
So if that's true, I mean,
he does have that. He is, and no one looks more impressive. Just of like, you look at a kid and you're like, oh, this guy, he's in the NFL, right? Like you just see that right away. And he'd look like that kind of right away. Like in college,
he looks like a superhero. He looks like a superhero.
Yeah. Totally. Right. Like it's funny because Kmet was a guy that when he came in, you're like, I mean, he had grown a lot and you're like, oh, he looks like, you can tell like this guy when he grows into his body. And then by the time he left, you're like, wow, like he was impressive. But Reardon was like almost like that right away. And which is crazy, but that's just kind of how he's built. Like good genes, I guess. Right? Yeah.
The first time I met Eli in person, I talked about this the other day, but I'm like 6'3", 6'4", like 260. I'm a big guy in my own right. And I met Eli and it was intimidating. Like I was talking to his dad, and then Eli came out of the corner of my eye, and Eli was like towering over me. And I was like, I was shook. Like it felt like the character from Rocky. That's what it felt like. I must break Eli. Yeah. That's what flashed across my brain the first time I met the kid. Freak. So I don't know. We talk about passing game receivers. I just thought I'd be remiss if I didn't. He's a weapon, man, and he's different, and he's a mismatch guy. And there's a handful of those guys sprinkled throughout the offense.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to see. He's a problem. Like you just look at him, and it's like, for me, especially as a former safety, it's like, God, I don't want to have to deal with this guy. We got to end it there, boys. Mike, we're gonna have to get you back on, because there's like so many topics. We didn't even touch on the offensive line. There's so many other things. So great conversation. And so we're gonna have to have you on again, talk some more ball. This is really fun for us. So thank you for coming on. Everyone, check out Mike on his Goolsby and Kennedy show on their Patreon. I believe that it's a YouTube thing. I don't know how Patreon works.
So real quick, yeah, this is a good way to wrap it up. And how I even fell into this thing was being a talking head on your YouTube channel. Yeah. There's a kid that I trained here in Omaha, Thomas Fedoni. So I converted him from a wide receiver to a tight end. He ends up being the #1 player in the country. I let Coach Reese know way back when, like, Notre Dame knew about this kid first. I promise. I'm like, he's going to be something. He ends up being a big shot recruit. Mike Singer, who was covering recruiting, called me to interview me about him as a prospect. And he was like, hey, do you know any ex-players that would want to do a podcast? I tend to say yes to stuff. It's just a good way to go through life. I'm like, I'll do it. And I did it like begrudgingly for like the first year. And I haven't gone back and watched any of those early episodes, but I'm sure it was brutal. But then, yeah, kind of through the Sam Hartman thing, and I took like a lot of like personal attacks. People were telling me, Jamie, I wasn't a Notre Dame man because I questioned Sam Hartman's, ability as a quarterback. And I'm like, to hell with this. So I'm going to start a Patreon. And I was a fan of your guys' stuff, and I reached out to Mike, fan of John Kennedy's work. The guy makes me laugh, and I was like, let's start a Patreon. And it's interesting because you can talk ball and get into all things Notre Dame, but like provide a level of entertainment. Like sometimes we take ourselves too seriously. Everybody wants to be right. Everybody wants to, I don't want to break stories, sources kind of come my way, but yeah, it's entertainment and it's fun. I'm proud of it. And then I think, yeah, just you guys are welcome to come on Singer and I's show. It's just like, I don't understand why we don't do more collaboration stuff. And I think fans get a kick out of it. We all do a good job. It's help all ships rise with the tide. Right. So, but if you're interested, it's patreon.com. As I tell people, Greg, it's like OnlyFans, but for like YouTube content.
Okay.
So you got to download the app, but it's patreon.com//alwaysirish. So we film stuff, it seems like every other night.
All right, cool. So check them out, guys. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. If you haven't caught us before, please subscribe to this channel. Please hit the like. Please hit the notification bell so you know every day we're going live. Jamie and I will be back on Thursday. Have a good rest of the week, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Keep hitting and hustling.